Childcare workers. What's the worst thing you've seen a teacher do at the daycare? I worked in childcare for 6 years, and over that time I saw more than I ever expected. There were days that left me exhausted, and nights I couldn't shake the images from my head. I loved working with children, but I quickly learned that not every teacher was there for the right reasons, and not every parent would believe what you saw, no matter how obvious it was. One job in particular still haunts me. I had just started as an assistant in a 2-year-old room. The lead teacher was a 19-year-old girl who had been getting comments from other staff about how quiet the children were under her care. At first, I thought it was a positive. Kids were calm, maybe too calm. But soon I realized why. She had a way of moving through the room that seemed normal on the surface, but the children flinched when she approached, and their eyes would widen whenever she raised her voice. There was an undercurrent of fear that I couldn't ignore. It all came to a head one lunch period. The toddlers were lining up against the wall for food, little bodies shuffling and bumping into each other as they always did. One child accidentally bumped another, who then bumped lightly into the wall. I watched as she strode across the room, her face tight, and took the smaller child by both ears. The next moment, she pressed his head against the cinder block wall. The child screamed like I've never heard before. Something snapped in me. I didn't move toward her first. I went straight for the child, scooping him up into my arms, feeling his small body trembling against mine. His sobs tore through the room and broke through the fog of anger that had almost consumed me. My hands shook, my chest heaving, but my focus was on him. I whispered his name, tried to soothe him while fighting the rage boiling inside. I carried him to the director's office, tears streaming down both our faces. I remember pacing the small office, repeating, "She's gone. You better get her out of my sight." My voice cracked, not just with fury, but with disbelief that someone could think that was acceptable, even for discipline. The director, a stern but fair woman, immediately called the teacher into the office. I watched as the girl entered, expression blank, as if she expected no real consequences. The director asked her if she had done what I'd described. Her answer came calmly. Yes, she had done it to show him what it felt like. The words hit me like a physical blow. There was no hesitation, no shame, just a casual justification for hurting a toddler. The director fired her on the spot, a necessary action, but I felt the weight of the moment hang in the room. My hands were still holding the child, and I felt the tremor of both our fear and relief. What shook me even more was what came next. The parents were never told. It wasn't an oversight. They had policies about reporting, but in practice, these things often went unspoken. So much of the abuse or mistreatment I saw during those years never reached the families. The assumption seemed to be that the staff could handle it, that a firing was enough. It wasn't enough. Children didn't have a voice outside that room, and parents had no way of knowing the harm that had almost been inflicted. After that incident, I made it my mission to be vigilant, to advocate for every child in my care. I reported another teacher for rough handling a few months later, the same pattern repeating. Parents were never informed. I quit shortly afterward, exhausted and disillusioned, and made a personal vow to avoid sending my own children into care unless I could personally supervise them during those early years. The job I loved so much became a source of heartbreak because I saw how fragile the trust was between teachers, children, and parents, and how easily it could be broken. Even now, years later, I think about that small child and the fear in his eyes, the way his tiny body shook in my arms. I think about the teacher and her lack of understanding of the damage she could cause. I think about the policies that allowed parents to remain in the dark. That day remains vivid in my memory. Not just the anger or fear, but the helplessness you feel as someone who knows what's right, but has to fight against a system that sometimes fails. The very children it's supposed to protect.